Let's be real, Major League Baseball stinks. The games can be a real chore to watch at times. Stats and algorithms and analytics and computers have determined that there's a new best way for the game to be played, and everyone's just kind of gone along with it. On defense, your starting pitcher just has to last like 4 or 5 innings, and then have the ball turned over to 8 matchup guys in the bullpen. Big shifts for every opposing player that comes up to bat because they aren't going to try and hit against it or anything. On offense, just send everyone up to go hacking for home runs. Take walks, don't steal bases, and don't worry about striking out. This is referred to as 3-outcome baseball, and it stinks. Writers know it, analysts know it, fans know it, but teams don't care because it's how games are won now. Think about it like motorsports. People complain that series like Formula 1 and NASCAR are boring, they're too expensive. The folks behind the scenes have realized that spending X amount of money to make the cars look certain ways and do certain things makes them faster, even if it drives up the cost of competition and starts to bore fans to death. But engineering can't be unlearned, and that's what they're dealing with. Baseball teams aren't going to unlearn what suddenly started working and just discard it for the sake of playing fun ball. So now what you have are games without action. Nothing much happens on the base paths. No one cares about hitting against their shifts, bunting, running, doubles, triples, etc. If you can't hit home runs or throw the ball 95 to 100, you're not welcome. I realized during the 2018 World Series just how bad this was. Games going long and dragging on and on and on, mound meetings, pitching changes, repeat, step off, repeat, everyone up swinging for the fences so a tie game just never ends. It's ugly to watch. Home runs are exciting, right? Yay, yeah, long ball, back on. What's one of the most exciting plays in football? The long ball, the deep pass. So what happens if a team's MIT and Harvard and Caltech crew comes to the realization that if you throw the ball as far as you can every time you take possession, and it's either a touchdown, an interception, or PI, that it'll win games for you? Then that's what football would turn into. And then the luster's gone off of it, and it's a broken sport. Fortunately, the powers that be of Major League Baseball realize that fans are getting tired of baseball becoming boring and games going on for 5 hours, so they're trying to do something about it without brainwashing teams into forgetting what they've learned. The rules of the game are going to have to change, so for starters, they're being tested out in the independent Atlantic League of Professional Baseball. This was not a sign I expected to see at an Atlantic League ballpark, but there it was, right on the door of the press box. Major League Baseball had announced that they were going to be using the Atlantic League as their proving ground for potential rule changes in the future. It had to be here. If they were going to start throwing crazy ideas at the wall in the minors, the parent clubs and the unions and all that would have had a fit. Doing all the biohazard testing off-site made sense. It came to a head at the 2019 Atlantic League All-Star Game in York, Pennsylvania, where I was working anyway. The press box and the rest of the core of the stadium was a crowded place, full of people in expensive sunglasses that I didn't recognize. The MLB was here to see its newest creation in action for the first time, and what you're probably here for, the automated ball strike system, aka Trackman, aka... despite the ominous nickname, it's still one of the more official titles, not that one. I'm not supposed to say that R word. And despite all of the scary terminology, it was okay. The show went on smoothly with automated ball strike zone, and the reporting showed as much. Because here's the thing, it's barely noticeable. People had the misconception that they were going to be getting rid of the umpire entirely, and that there was either going to be nobody behind home plate or some faceless box. The ump is still there. The system works by measuring the pitch, then relaying the call to the umpire behind the plate, who then makes the call. He's wearing a transmitter with an earpiece. There's no board readout, no light display behind home plate or beyond center field, and he still performs all the regular functions that the home plate umpire would. Plays at the plate, checks swings, pace of play, meetings, etc. The technology behind it is the Trackman system. Here, it's mounted up at the top of the stadium, centered behind home. It's a radar device that measures data of the ball as it moves in play. From where it's released, what pitch it is, what the speed is, what the spin rate and break is, on, and then once hit, what its launch angle, trajectory, and distance will be. Major and minor league baseball teams already use the system to track their own players, but not to feed information directly to the umpires. This is a first. What it's done in use in the Atlantic League is clearly define the strike zone to aid the umpires. A strike is a strike. If it's off the plate, it's not going to be called. What I've noticed is that it's eliminated many of those borderline pitches on the corners, but expanded the zone up and down, where umpires may have been hesitant to call before. And that hasn't gone without its hiccups in establishing that new zone, like in the first regular season game afterwards, in the first inning. High Point's pitching coach Frank Viola had a disagreement about the zone and got tossed a whopping 1 inning into the ordeal, and he was hot. Chucked his clipboard up in the air, stormed out and read the umps the riot act, and this all went on a while, as he gave the fans a piece of his mind on the way out, too. Now the rest of the new rules in the big book. Number 5.09, making an out. A batter is out when, with 2 strikes, he bunts foul for the second time. So basically, you get 2 tries to bunt out on strike 3. If you're sacrificing someone over and you bunt foul on a 2-strike count, it's not a strikeout. You get 1 more chance to move him over. This encourages more bunting. Rule 2.03, the bases. First, second, and third base, blah, 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 just talking about the composition of the bases, nothing new. But down near the bottom, bags shall be 18 inches square. That's the key. What this means is that for the infield, larger bases. The standard base in pro baseball is 15 inches by 15 inches in size. As of the new rules, the Atlantic League bag is 18 by 18. My guess is that this makes it slightly easier for players to find surface area when they're sliding into second and third, and also maybe gives a tiny bit more room at first so that feet don't get tangled up when the first baseman's catching a ball to finish off a play. As a fan, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Rule 5.02, fielding positions. When the ball is put in play at the start of or during a game, all fielder blah 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 blah, wall of text. Long story short, no infield shifts. At least not big ones. And there's a penalty if you do. There's an invisible line stretching straight ahead from home plate through second base. When the ball is pitched, 2 infielders have to be to the left of it, 2 to the right. And they have to be somewhere in the ballpark of the infield and base paths, can't be out where the right or left fielder would normally be positioned. This is another step to boost offense. I've always hated when players seemingly refuse to try hitting against the massive shift that defenses employ on them if they're a pull hitter, and was in the camp of, well, it's their fault if they won't bunt or take a hit or stop swinging for homers or whatever. But it's becoming more and more clear that teams and batters aren't interested in trying to go that route. So if you're a pull hitter, you're in luck. Your average is about to go up. Here's another big one, Rule 5.05, when the batter becomes a runner. The batter becomes a runner when the catcher fails to catch any pitch and the batter chooses to run intent to advance with guidance to umpires. The batter must demonstrate. Long story short, this is the rule about stealing first base. Stealing first. They took a real big swing at something wild with this one in creating a whole new way for the batter to reach base. And predictably with something that outrageous sounding, it picked up some media attention. But despite all that anticipation, it wasn't used very often at all. I only saw it take place once after it was enacted at the All-Star break, and it was by our outfielder Wellington Dotel, a guy who's shown that he can use his brain while on offense. Here's a case from last year where the Long Island pitcher loses his footing and stumbles off the mound while trying to release. Rather than bugging his eyes out, Dotel stays with the pitch and tomahawks the heck out of it, and whoops, that one left the yard. Not how the Ducks drew that one up. Fast forward to summer this year. He's settling in at the plate, waiting for the pitcher to come set, and whoa, think fast, here it is. So Dotel's like, alright pal, you want to use your quick pitch on me? I'm going to quick step on down to first base. So this was done somewhat out of spite, and he's still hot about the pitcher trying that move on him there, like, nah, come on bro, that's what you get. It was surprisingly exciting to see, but again, I only witnessed it once. Couple of reasons for this, so I'll start with the basics of the rule. As a batter, you can try and advance to first base on any ball that isn't fielded cleanly by the catcher, not just strike 3. Like rounding first, if you fake a move or start moving that way, you can't double back. Once you go, you gotta go. It went down in the score sheet as a fielder's choice. Well, no one really thought it was worth it to them to have their box score get an 0 for 1 just to reach first, and doing it voluntarily. No one stole. Further into the season, the league quietly amended that rule to make it a walk, so there's no penalty to the player's stats, but it still didn't take off despite fans knowing the rule and shouting for batters to take off running on any pitch to the backstop. I'd heard that the players have a gentleman's agreement not to steal first, and if that's true, the league probably isn't happy about that. But more so, most would rather just take their hacks to the plate than take a free pass before they've had a chance. I could see it come into play in certain situations, late in games where you're desperate for a runner, or if the batter is fast on the base paths but hits for a low average. So it's a fun idea, but would never be anything more than a weird trick play deep in the rulebook. Which is fun. Baseball doesn't have very many of those. I mean, I watch Canadian football, and there are some special teams rules in that are ridiculously obscure, like this somehow being a legal play. I like sports with those hidden touches, but is it worth Major League Baseball adding to see a few times a year? We'll see. Rule 5.10, substitutions and pitching changes, including visits to the mound. If a pitcher is replaced, the substitute pitcher shall pitch to the batter, then a batter, any substitute batter until reached judgment as inning. This is the 3-batter minimum rule. If you enter the game as a pitcher, you either have to finish the half inning or pitch to 3 batters in the order. This rule takes a lot of heat from diehards when it's brought up for the majors, but I mean, just do it. The matchup substitutions are just getting stupid. Too many pitchers, too many pitching changes. Righty, lefty. Manager can't put on his pants without using 7 pitchers to close out a game. Takes way too long. And then when you hit extra innings, who do you have left? Some poor guy on his day off who has to eat 5 innings until he finally collapses, and you use a position player. I'm in favor of it. Pace the play. Speaking of which, visits to the mound requiring a pitcher's removal from the game. This is another word salad, so they sum it up pretty easily. There shall be no mound visits, timeouts, or conferences without a pitching change. No mound visits. Thank you, baseball gods. This was something, as a guy who watched about 90 games in person this year, that I had had enough of. Too many meetings, too much time. Catcher coming out every at-bat, pitching coach taking a slow walkout every time someone reaches base, manager coming out to stall for the relievers. Enough! Atlantic League finally made it simple. If the coach from the dugout is heading towards the pitcher's mound, and he's not bringing the athletic trainer with him, you know that the pitcher is coming out of the game. Saves a ton of time, and on a personal level for the folks doing the show, makes it easier for us to script without that mystery. That's it. Just the manager. Catcher can go out halfway to run through signs, and that is it. And it was a rule change that was definitely noticeable as I was splitting time between working in the Atlantic League and in the affiliated New York Penn League. They didn't have the rule in the New York Penn League, so when I'd see a guy coming out, it's like, oh, pitching coach again? Make it simple, guys. There were a handful of other changes implemented having to do with less time between innings, checked swings being more lenient, and a proposal to move the pitching mound back 2 feet starting midway through the 2020 season. I'm not really convinced that that one is actually going to happen, so we'll see. These were all implemented to A, speed up the dead time in games, and B, create more action on the base paths. And I don't know if it's just the mindset and gameplay of players and teams in the league, or if the rules contributed to it, but in 2019 the Atlantic League was fun to watch. More than the Major League staring contests. Some of these are almost definitely going to be implemented at a higher level. It seems like sooner or later, the Trackman umpire is going to be a thing. First in the high minors, and then in the majors. I don't know how I feel about it. On one hand, it holds the home plate umpires accountable for their zones and their actions, which is a common complaint about some of the big league umps. On the flip side, it takes away a little bit of the edge to the game. I mean, as long as it's your team that's on the benefit of the blown call. You know what I mean. The rules and games of tomorrow, here today.